Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Living With Us. I'm Sharon Mundia, and we are at Park Inn by Radisson. It's a beautiful morning, and we're about to have a conversation that often is stigmatized, a conversation that we're told quite early, we don't talk about that. But that we've come to learn is not how to go about the conversation of sex, and teen sex to be specific. I've got a man who has been loved for many years. He's been working with the youth for many years. He also, at some point, was my boss. Ladies and
Repeat that. Tell him
he
again.
was my boss. That is DNG, who
Yo.
is the founder of 254 Entertainment, which has a new initiative, which is Punguza Initiative. Welcome.
Thank you so
boss.
much. It's exciting to be here. It's a bit chilly.
Yeah, it's a bit chilly.
Yeah.
But do you want to tell them how I was working?
Yeah.
Do you want to break that down?
Yo, we run a company called 254 Digital, and before we metamorphosized into a digital PR agency and a creative branding company, we used to have a website that we're trying to get off the ground, and we used to do lifestyle, entertainment, really conscious articles.
Yeah.
And she was our lifestyle and fashion writer.
I can't believe it. I was there for like a few months, I believe.
I think the business was pretty unsuccessful then because we were not able to monetize the website specifically. So thereafter, we had to now rethink our business model, and we turned it around and we modeled the business into a creative and digital PR agency.
Yeah, but I have to say thank you, because that for the period of time where I was working, it did give me a sense of one, financial stability. I appreciated that, and also I got an insight into just coming into the office, getting to having certain deliverables and working on the discipline and working on things, on articles, lifestyle articles. So that was good. So thank you.
You're welcome. I've always believed in empowering young people and giving young people an opportunity to find themselves, find their niche and grow.
Yeah.
And every time I meet people who used to work for me, in different spheres of life, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So have you always been interested in working with the youth, talking to the youth, connecting with the youth?
I believe so, because from the onset of my entertainment career, which kicked off in the gospel arena in 2003, I've always focused on youth as my target audience and as my core consumer base.
Yeah.
Therefore, starting with ministry, going to high schools, campuses, prisons, name it, churches, estates, door to door, doing evangelism and things like that.
Yeah.
I've always had a soft heart for people, and I've always felt like young people are marginalized. When we talk about marginalized communities, we always think the Turkanas, the Lodwas, blah, blah, blah. But no, the young people of this generation are marginalized. We don't have access to opportunities. We don't have access to financing. We don't have access to information. And even what we're talking about Punguza, we don't have access to health services. You see, so we have real problems that if we don't articulate, the generation that came before us really is not concerned, and because if they were, we wouldn't have the problems we have today.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of youth over the years that you've been in the entertainment industry. What are some of the big concerns that have come out of your conversations with them, their frustrations?
The core is unemployment and poverty. Hence why our first initiative that we launched in 2017 was focused on career, business, and entrepreneurship, and just changing mindsets around that. You find that, yes, the job market is pretty saturated. Annually, 800,000 young people leave campuses, and these young people don't have a place to go to because people are not retiring. We have people being re-employed, even in government, at the age of 80 plus. Like, those people should be playing with their grandchildren and smoking cigars in the farm. They shouldn't be fighting with you and I for jobs. But we are in a society that really doesn't care about its young people. And so unemployment and poverty is a core. Along the way, we came across very interesting statistics around sexual reproductive health rights and access to health services. Things like the new HIV/AIDS infection rate being 33% among youth. That means that the problem we thought we had dealt with to some extent is seemingly becoming worse and worse. You look at teenage pregnancies, which 33% of those, or any unwanted pregnancies, leading to abortions. And we all know that abortion is illegal in Kenya. And therefore, there are backstreet abortions taking place every single day for 5 Gs, 10 Gs, thereabout, depending on where you go. And many of them lead to death or really complicated health problems thereafter. And these are things we can deal with.
Right.
For example, like with Punguza, we're saying we need to have the conversation around sex with young people.
Right.
As you were rightfully saying, it's that stigmatized and demonized convo.
Yeah.
And young people feel like we cannot talk about this because they've been told it's so bad, it's, oh my God, demons.
Yeah, and yet when the time comes, it's like, where are my grandchildren?
Yeah,
Why aren't you married?
That's
Come
it,
on, you
that's
have
it, that's
babies.
it.
So it's like at some point it's the worst
It
thing, and then
switches.
at some point you're either not doing it enough or doing it right or something. People
Yeah.
are in your business. But why don't you explain what is Punguza?
So
initiative?
Punguza is a youth sensitization and advocacy campaign with a specific focus on triggering conversations around sex. Why? Because we are preaching responsibility. We're all about responsible sexual behavior. We're cognizant that young people are having sex randomly and irresponsibly. So that's the thing. So for us, we're not an abstinence campaign because we are so affirmatively sure that you cannot preach abstinence to a generation that is already sexually active. You understand?
Yeah.
So what then can we do to solve the problem of HIV/AIDS infections, STIs, unwanted pregnancies, and so on and so forth? The first thing is to talk about it, then give young people the right information that, with that information, then they can make informed choices, knowledgeably that they can, there are consequences to every action, and every action has a reaction. And, they need to know that they have choice, they have rights, and they have options. That every time they have a sexual encounter, it doesn't have to lead to being pregnant.
Right.
Because they're teenagers
Yeah.
and they can't go to a chemist and ask for a packet of condoms.
Yeah.
Or they can't afford it.
Right. So what constitutes irresponsible sexual behavior?
Irresponsible sexual
Yeah.
behavior is sexual behavior that leads to unwanted results.
Okay. Be that pregnancies,
Yes.
STDs,
Yes.
HIV, AIDS.
And those are things we can tackle. Those are things we can deal with. So for us, we're looking at the consequences that everybody's looking at. Oh my God, KCSE is has taken place. X number of students are doing the paper in hospital or could not sit for the exam because they're pregnant. We've been dealing with the symptoms rather than the root cause of this problem. So we came in and we're like, yo, wait a minute. We know how to talk to this youth. We've been doing it for corporate brands for the last 12 years, effectively selling products and services. It's about time we switched it up and got involved in social impact, because this approach from a boardroom perspective, we design a campaign for young people and we call it Tumechill, and no one really is chilling.
Right.
But it's a billion-shilling project.
It's so true.
But like,
That's
can't you rethink? Can't you involve young
Yeah.
people in this conversation and
Yeah.
design something for them that works,
Yeah.
that is practical? That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we've been taking time to just talk to young people, bring them on board, helping us to create this campaign, to execute it. It's by youth for youth.
Okay, so you're speaking to the youth.
Yes.
And in doing that, what are some of the key things that your key messages that you're putting out with the campaign?
For example, triggering the conversation, telling
Okay.
them that they have the right
Okay.
to talk about it, that they have the right to access health centers,
Okay.
because there's so much stigma. If, for example, you have unprotected sex
Mm-hmm.
because, as I said, you cannot afford a condom, or you don't know about it, or you're too
Because-
shy
right, yeah.
to walk into a pharmacy,
yeah.
so you have unprotected sex and you get an STI. Are you going to tell your mom?
Oh.
Are you going to tell your dad? So what do? So you
Right.
cannot get the service, you cannot get treatment, yet you have the right
Yeah.
to go to a health facility and say, hey, I'm unwell. Hook me up with some tubs, yo.
Yeah.
You understand?
Right.
So we need to break those barriers so that we deal with the issues. So people are suffering in silence.
Yeah.
If you're raped, where do you go? If you've encountered domestic violence, where do you go? People don't even have the right information about contraceptives or cannot afford them. So we've also been doing stakeholder engagement, and I sit in boardrooms and I ask health providers, like, why can't we do clinics where we have a free distribution of these contraceptives to youth? Do you know that discounted contraceptives are as low as 50 shillings?
So
Like
why,
for the
why
injection,
don't-
the
yeah.
3-6 month
Yeah.
or 1 year
Yeah, yeah.
injection,
Yeah.
you can get it. But we need to have these conversations with the corporate players who, it's their business to provide. So,
Yeah.
so as a sensitization and advocacy campaign, that's what we're doing. So we did our first event at Githurai 44 for the International Youth Day. And we partnered with an organization called Youth to Youth Nairobi, and we set up different tents for different things. You can get your testing, if you get your results spot on. After that, you can go for screening for even cancer. You can get your contraceptives free from condoms. If you want tapako shika ukae nayo kwa nyumba jipange. If you want, the others implants, we direct them to the nearest health facility, things like that. So it's about creating forums for young people to feel safe to come, learn, get the right information, and engage.
Yeah. So from your conversations, if they are not having these talks with their parents, where are they going to get this information?
They're having these conversations with their peers, and most of the times it's broken telephone. Remember when we were younger?
Yeah.
I tell you, I hear something. By the time it gets around this area, it's the wrong message.
It's not what it,
so people, there's so many myths and misconceptions. Like I remember when I was young, one of my friends got a girl impregnated in our estate, like directly opposite our house, and so that guy, is in so much drama. So we're like, why did you use a condom? And he's like, but the chick is a virgin. So in his mind, a virgin cannot get pregnant. That's a misconception.
Wow,
so he was told that by somebody, and somebody, and it kept going around.
Right.
So the next thing, he's in Kisumu, Mitini, Mteja, causes in issues, man.
Do you think the internet plays a big role also in the conversations that are going around?
For sure. Don't forget that young people, remember when you were youth. Remember when you were young and going through adolescence and puberty. You didn't really understand your body, but it was leading you to either this direction or that direction, right? So you start getting inquisitive and experimental. Your friends are talking about it. You want to find out about it, so you Google how to. I sit with adults and they have children and they're like, I found my son Googling how to have a first kiss. And the mom is so pissed off and crazy and she's going through so much. And I'm like, so I remind them because they're my friends. And some of them are even my clients. And we sit down and I'm like, what about you when you were 12?
Yeah. In fact, we did, back then there was no Google. So how did you do it?
You watch movies.
Movies or books. And you were like.
And we had games like Kiss Commander Promise.
What?
You didn't have those games?
Oh my God, yes.
You remember?
Wait, how did it go again? Let's take it back.
Kiss Commander Promise was
Kiss Command or
you
so like
you had to put your fingers like this, like a pax, right?
Yeah.
So if they find you without a pax or or a
Kiss Command or Promise.
So you choose.
You either kiss someone, I command you to
do something, or you make a promise to do something. And that's how people started experimenting. So you find people kissing behind the bookshelf in school.
Wow. Let me tell you, I really.
Or in the estate, And that's the same stage in life that our youth are in today.
Yeah. But only they have the internet and a wealth of
and
information.
a mobile phone. There's nothing as powerful as a mobile phone.
Yeah. And so whereas we had Kiss Commander Promise and we were trying to figure out
it was manual.
behind. Them they have access to. I mean, and pornography is this close. As I was trying to research for this show, I just very innocently I just typed in sex teen or teen sex. Because I just wanted to find out more statistics and
took
understand.
You to a website.
And I was like, this is not what I was going for. And also, why are we...
It's easily accessible
it was
and it's
so
free.
shocking just how much, was on there.
And nowadays, most of the houses, schools and all that have Wi-Fi.
Right, of course, yeah.
So if you have a mobile phone and you have Wi-Fi, surely, what else do you need?
Right.
So you get this information at a very young age.
Yeah.
In fact, the really crazy statistics show that the first sexual contact documented from a pregnancy perspective is 9 years old. A 9 year
sexual contact, 9 years old.
9 years old is somebody perhaps in standard 3. Standard 3, that's not even upper primary. Like that's really young. And if they're pregnant, and I'm not talking about rape or defilement or all those other crazy things. I'm talking about like peer to peer. Like a 9-year-old and another 9-year-old in the estate or in the school hooked up. So we can either sit back and pretend like it ain't happening. Like our society is a very pretentious society. Hypocritical to the letter. So we can either pretend like, our young people are not being raised, they're godly, and we are a Christian country where we are, is it about 70% Christian? Though, and we're so religious and we go to Sunday school and we're in youth ministry and all that. But no.
Yeah.
Or we can deal with it and just give people access to information, access to services, and give them choice.
Right.
The right choice. It's heavy, right?
Yeah, it's heavy. And I do want us to get into how we involve the parents, if we should involve the parents.
We should.
But we've got to take a break first. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. We're at Park Inn by Radisson, and I've got DNG, who founded the Punguza Initiative, meant to stir the conversation around sex and responsible sex and sexual behavior amongst the youth. So before the break, we were talking about, well, first of all, we were talking about Kiss Commander Promise, which I completely forgot, which was like our version of like
Truth or
testing the
Dare.
waters and figuring out like,
Yeah.
ooh, what's that? But now things have changed so much. Do you think parents should be involved in the conversation, in the, the parent conversation?
Great question. I think 100% parents should be involved. But parents, are in denial that their young people are even capable of it. You see, if you're a parent, you don't want to look at your child like that. You know, you want to look at your child like this, that, oh,
Innocent.
coochie,
Yeah,
cuddly,
baby.
innocent baby that I give birth to and I raise and I pay fees for, blah, blah, blah. And you don't even want to imagine, like, this person, this little person can do that. So it's a very hard conversation to have as a parent. I can concur to that. And, I'm not one of those people who just shift all the blame towards parents, need to take care of their children, parents, or teachers. I think even the community or even external people like we, the media or influencers, have a role to play in shaping society and shaping mindsets. So I think it's a collective effort.
So how would you advise for parents to approach this conversation? Is there a right time, right language?
Experts say that the earlier the better. Before they get the information from peers who will mislead them, you need to have that conversation with them. But remember, parents will always tell their kids, do not. It's always do not, or it's wrong, or it's ungodly, or, if you love Jesus, you go to hell. Yeah, I remember, like, for me, it was, if you hang out with girls, you're not going to go to university.
Stop.
Yeah.
It was as
yeah,
simple
girls
as
are bad,
if you hang out with
watakuharibia
girls.
masomo, utashindwa kusoma, utakuwa unarandaranda mitaani.
So if you hang out with girls.
Yeah, so you start hanging out
it.
with girls and you're like, hey, wait a minute.
But with,
Girls ain't bad.
Yeah.
Girls are easy.
Yeah.
So we even as parents, man, we feed our kids the wrong information. We feed our kids lies. Total lies. On the real, man. Just think about how your parents told you about sex. How was it
Oh,
for
no,
you?
there was no conversation about sex.
At all.
There was no conversation.
See, for us, even it was just girls are bad, boys are bad.
Yeah. Just focus on
school.
Yeah.
But life is not about school.
Yeah.
Life is about balance.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
So we teach our children the wrong things and they realize that our folks were daft and we couldn't. And then we stop relating with our parents because they're like, hey, mzayali need cheat.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at it very differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think the conversation around sex is or should be related to the conversation around alcohol and drug use? Do you think the two are linked? That the reason why perhaps a lot of youth are more experimental, curious, or starting to have sex quite early is because of access to drugs and alcohol?
Well, I think drugs and alcohol have always been a thing. I think all generations have gone through this curiosity phase of I want to drink because my dad told me not to drink, or I want to smoke a cigarette because mom doesn't like cigarettes. I think we need to go back into our minds and remember how it was when we were young. You understand? Like, we started smoking early. When someone's dad in the estate would leave, have a cigarette, ametupa. Unaenda unaivuta. At least for us, that's in our estate, that's how we started smoking. Along the way, you realize, is it your thing or it's not your thing, and you decide later. But like the experimental phase starts then. Right. Kids are inquisitive. Like, don't look at this, kids or teens in the crib and you like, these ones are not capable of this. They're capable of anything, man.
So do you think that as you're having the conversation about sex, that it's also important to talk about alcohol?
I think responsibility, you're right, it's across board.
Right.
It's just being responsible with money, drugs, because they're not going to stop. I think we need to accept the reality that young people are not going to stop having sex or drinking alcohol or smoking blunts. They are going to continue. So how can you offer guidance? Think of it like, this is your big sister or big bro.
Right.
You find your one of my boys found his small bro with a packet of condoms. I guess I think it's standard 8. So it's like, hey, yaani mtoi mdogo hivi ashaanza kukula madem. So that's his convo in his head. But I'm like, this is an opportunity for you to give your small bro guidance.
Right.
Ndio asipatiane mimba,
Yeah.
usianze kumkashifu kwa nini umempata na CD.
Right. But I can understand why it would be so terrifying, such a daunting and terrifying thought for a parent to think they're definitely going to be having sex, drinking alcohol, and drugs, which even as an adult, I do think that a combination of alcohol and sex can often lead you down a path that if you're not drinking or if you're in your sober mind, you'd be like, I don't know if that's the decision out of me
Yeah, but you
as
see,
an
like,
adult. So as a
it's
thinking
pleasure.
about your
This is
child,
pleasure.
Yeah.
So when you combine alcohol, sex, drugs, it's even it's heightened, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So the power of say 100. So it's more fun to do it when you're drunk. Why? As you say, you can deny responsibility. You can say, yeah, I was drunk, so that's why I gave it up. You know, that's what most chicks say, right?
No.
Sharon is like, oh my God, I can't relate.
No, no,
Maybe
no.
then you're a
I don't know
nice
if,
girl who
no, no,
didn't
no.
do these things.
No, no,
right?
no, it's not about
Tell us.
that. I just don't know if that's what girls say, that I was drunk.
Many girls say they were drunk, that's why they did it.
I mean, well,
Maybe we're in different forms.
yeah.
Let me tell you another conversation I was having with a teenager. Now, this girl tells me, so we have the Punguza page, very active, very, very, very safe, because some of these conversations, we do not reshare them. So it's a safe space for young people to come and talk. And she was in trouble with her mom because her mom found her with a packet of P2, Postinol, right? Which is the most commonly used contraceptive, yet it's an emergency contraceptive, right? So there we have it. The mom finds her with the P2 and she goes off. Like, oh my God, takes her phone, time out, takes all this. So later she's telling us this conversation on the platform. And so the question is, as a parent, you find your daughter with P2 pills, should you be pissed at her or should you be excited that she is being responsible?
Right. Or at least use it as an opening to have that conversation and be like, what else are you curious
Yeah.
about? Can we,
You see-
this is a safe space. But I think back to the alcohol, I don't know if it's just a girls thing. That's why I hesitated. I think even guys, and at least
Yeah.
in my experience, I know a lot of, and especially when
Inakupatia
you're
moral,
younger,
moral,
that's
inakupatia
what
moral.
gives you that kind of like mask, yeah, that kind of, oh, I've got this. But I guess what I was even saying is I can see how it would be such a terrifying conversation to have for any parent, but I don't think it means don't have it because
Yeah.
it's
And you know what I'd say? For parents, you can also rope in like another auntie or uncle who's cool.
right.
You know that every family has a cool uncle, cool auntie with vibes, man.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times I'd be called in to mentor my younger cousins or my friends' children because I'm in their space. So like one of my clients had this kid who was like, he wanted to be a DJ. He put dreadlocks. He did everything I did when I was that age. So my client was like, oh my God, you have to come talk to my son. So I did, and we'd hang out. I'm like, yo, what's the issues? It's like, yo, I just want to. So I kept telling him, I'm like, this guy just wants to follow his dream. You want him to go to school, study something different? He doesn't want it. So if you continue doing this with your child, it will break.
Right.
So and I left it to her to make her choice. The next thing I know, yeah, the essay and all that. So it's beautiful. So I challenge parents: if you don't have the guts to talk to your child directly, bring another person, another party.
Right.
Don't bring the pastor or the sheikh. Bring somebody who can relate. Because this thing is all about relation.
I 100% agree with
Yeah.
that because I think often religion, it's
Religion
not,
talks at the youth.
Yeah, it's not
The
the
Bible
space
says
to have
abstinence
honest.
still marriage. How many people do you know who have ever abstained till marriage?
I know a few actually, but it's not it's most of the people I know have
Maybe
not.
like
But I know a few.
0.0001%
Yeah.
of human beings.
So, so DNG, how can people be a part of this initiative? How can people participate?
Several ways. I think first and foremost, like our page. We're on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The handle is Punguza KE, at Punguza KE. Look at what we're about, learn, like, engage in a conversation. A lot of people have been asking me about how can we volunteer. It's very interesting that people want to give their time, which is brilliant. So feel free to hit us up. Use the inboxes on the different pages. We have our details like telephone numbers for the office, email addresses. All the information is there. Just go to our page and check it out. Write to us. Let us know. For those who have like events, that they want us to plug into. As we're more than willing. We're trying to get into high schools, campuses, mtaa, what we call town halls, because there are people who are not in any institution, but tuko kwenye base maze, tunashikisha, tunapeleka naria, tunataka kukaa mtaa yenu. So we've already started, and for us, we're even seeing more impact in the hood.
Wow,
Because
yeah.
guys are available, they're chilling. All we
Yeah.
need is set up some cool music, vibes, and it draws
Get the
numbers.
conversation going.
Yeah,
All right.
and I think also to challenge like the corporate brands and the NGOs and donor partners, plug in, give us the support we need. We cannot do this alone. It's not a DNG journey or Punguza journey. It's a collective effort between us and all stakeholders who are willing, or like-minded organizations and individuals who are willing
Right.
to walk this journey together.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming,
pleasure.
for sharing, and for having a conversation that's sometimes uncomfortable, but very important to have, because it's happening, and sticking our heads in the sand as if it's not happening.
making it worse.
Yeah, it's making it worse. All right. Thanks so much, DNG. We've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about a hashtag that's been going around. That's Sex Consent Age KE. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. So earlier this year, a ruling was passed that aims to lower the sexual consent age from 18 to 16 years old. Apparently, the judge seemed to think that there was a lot of men who are in jail for having sex with younger girls who seemed okay to have sex anyway. So I guess, what is the problem with that? Why not lower the age? No. We've got two ladies here who felt very strongly and were part of the team that helped start the hashtag Sex Consent Age KE to try and make sure that it stayed at 18. The ladies are Sarah Thiga, who's
Yes.
been on the show before.
Yes, thank
Welcome
you.
back.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Pleasure. And Mary-Lise Bubois.
Yes.
Mary-Lise Bubois.
Yes.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Mary-Lise. Why don't you start? You're a gender rights activist.
As you said,
right?
I'm a human rights activist and a gender expert, also a black, queer, radical, intersectional feminist. And yes, I have a special bias on issues to do with children and women and, of course, LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
And it's because I have lived as a child, I am living as a woman, and I'm living as a queer woman. So those
Yeah.
three things are very important to me. And when it comes to discussions about things like consent, it's very personal for me because also I'm a rape survivor personally. And so for me, that is something that is very personal. And we need to have honest discussions about that. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah?
My name is Sarah Thiga. I'm a communications expert, and besides that, I'm a women rights crusader with a special bias on reproductive health rights in Kenya, and I'm also an avid reader. I took part in this campaign because we need to safeguard our children, and I felt that we, as women today, we need to speak fiercely about this and protect our young girls right now. Yes.
So why do you think that the conversation about sex growing up, you don't want to talk about it, parents treat it as taboo, but at the same time, a judge would be willing to lower to drop that consensual age from 18 to 16? Why do you think that's so?
The Justice Maraga felt that there are many young men in prison because of consensual sex. So he felt that we need to address this. And when we look at data, I feel like that statement is not justified because there's a prison that provided some data that when it comes to sexual offenses, there are about 1,500 people who are jailed for such sexual offenses acts. But when you look at the data, 16 people are women, and then the rest are men. But these men are 18 to 25 years old. So actually, they are not even kids or young men who are in prison for this. So I think it was right for him to bring up such a discussion, but I think it wasn't justified.
Right.
For me, I'd say it's the manifestation of how much rot we have in the society, and it's beginning to come out. Because then the conversation we need to have is how are we supposed to have sex conversation, and more so sex consent conversation? Where do we start from? It's how families have failed people who have to bear responsibility to have these conversations with these children that have failed, and now it's manifesting in our judicial system, because then now it's like a system is crumbling where we have so many people that are coming into prison. And Makio, they're not coming into prison because they are underage. As how things are looking, it's 18-year-old boys who are going into prison. Legally, they are legal of age. What they have not been told growing up, and they've never understood, is the fact that if you're underage, you cannot consent to sex. And because they've never had that conversation, they've been doing it. But now that age has caught up with them, and you can't tell me they were in jail because the people they had sex with consented. If they consented, probably this wouldn't have been a case that was reported to begin with. The case that would have been reported would be early pregnancy, for instance, for the girl, but it wouldn't have been a case of abuse and rape and all that kind of stuff. It was reported because there was abuse that happened, and if it happened and if they were underage, for that matter, we have juvenile prisons. They would have gone there for correction and all that kind of stuff. But they've gone to normal prisons because you're above 18. Legally, according to the Kenyan Constitution, when you're 18, you have to get your ID, you're legal of age to make your own choices and everything. And every choice comes with a consequence. So did they have sex with someone who is of age to make sexual consent? They did not do that. And basically what this was trying to bring out is that it was bringing out the rot that is in the society. And the worst thing that happened, I think, under Maraga's leadership would now then to feed into that rot by saying now we need to lower the age, because then imagine living in a time like this where we have your average 17-year-old looks like a back in the day 24-year-old, body-wise and otherwise. Now imagine if you lower it to 16. You're already victimizing a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, because nowadays kids are growing very fast. And if we go by just looking at how children are growing very fast, how would you tell if a 9-year-old who has already developed breasts and the body has already started forming, who would want to consider wanting to know their age, for instance? Because you've already victimized even more children.
Right. And when does it stop? If it's 16, then does it come 14? If it's 14, then
12,
it's more.
Then before you know it, we are a society that doesn't care about our children, and that is the problem right now that we need to address.
Yeah. So I just had a conversation with DNG about teen sex and the fact that the youth are having sex, and so pretending that no, to chill, it's not, it's false. So what is your response to that? To the fact that there are younger and younger people curious about sex and having it, not just curious but exploring it. So what's your response? What's your response to that?
I think, it's true. Even when you look at Sigmund Freud's work, he contributed to say that human beings were sexual beings, and it's okay for kids to be curious about sex. But and it's true that kids are having sex, and but if you look at data, it's not purely peer-to-peer sex. It's young girls and girls are being introduced to sex by older men, 5 to 10 years older than they are. And younger boys are being introduced by sex by older women. Let's say, for example, your house help, your neighbor, your auntie. These are the people who are introducing our kids to sex. So the fact that kids are having sex, it's true. I can say peer-to-peer sex is around 30%. And I believe that as parents in our society today, we need to be the people to introduce our kids to sex. Have these conversations back at home. Because if you let the world introduce sex to your kids, I mean, it's going to damage them. It's going to take advantage of them and exploit them. But if you empower your kid with information, you empower them what sex is, when should be the right time to have sex, how do you have it, how do you protect yourself, what is consent, can you have how does a woman consent to sex, how do you ask for consent to sex. It prevents and protects your child, because at the end of the day, information is power. And it's best, you're the one, as a parent, you're the one who's best fit to introduce and socialize your kids to sex. So it's a conversation we need to have. I remember in Naivasha, we were speaking to a parent and said, I cannot speak to my kids about sex because I don't know how to even start a conversation. So I think even as parents, empower yourself on how to have these conversations. Let's not bury our heads in the sand.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get into that in a moment. But what are your thoughts on that?
A kid begins to develop sexually at 8 years old. So it would be pretentious of us to assume we shouldn't talk to our kids about sex. And I feel like that has been one of the major things that our parents and the parents that have come before have failed in majorly, because most of us are introduced to sex by people who are very close to us, but people who are supposed to speak to us about sex and help us be liberated when it comes to sex. Understand when is the time to have sex, like she said, why to have sex, because ultimately having sex is not a bad thing, because we are all sexual beings. I mean, if we looked at the world, 7 billion of us, we can't be a bad thing if all of us were born out of
Right.
this thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It cannot necessarily be a bad thing. What becomes bad is the fact that we now pretend and bury our heads in pretending that sex is a taboo subject. We shouldn't talk about it, because if we talk about it, we're introducing our kids to it, and when we introduce our kids to it, we don't know how to control. A human being doesn't need to be controlled. A human being needs to be informed. When kids are informed, part of informing them would be to tell them that sex is not a bad thing. But having it at the wrong time is what makes it bad, because then when you have sex, it comes with consequences. They don't have to be big consequences like contracting HIV or getting pregnant or anything like that. It's simple things like living with STIs and all that kind of stuff, and how then those would affect your future life if you have plans to become a parent and all that kind of stuff. How would that look like when you engage in reckless sex? And when you inform these kids about this, part of what you'd inform them is also things to do with consent, and just tell them how you're living in a country that is governed by laws, and that you may feel like, of course, emotionally and everything, you're growing and developing, and that means you develop a percentage of curiosity. There's many ways to fulfill that curiosity, and one of them is not to have sex. One of them is to have peer groups where you can sit and discuss. Do you feel like this? So that you can normalize all these things you feel before you actually tell yourself, I need to have sex to confirm if what I'm feeling is true or not. So that we can have conversation. And I mean, if a boy is having wet dreams, for instance, for most of them, they never understand everyone is going through that. For most of them, it's a topic we can't discuss, because I do not know if the next boy is going through it. But if we sat in a peer group and actually discuss and realize, oh my goodness, all of us go through this, it's actually normal. It's actually something you just have to wait, and within you'll get to 18 eventually. Then you'll have that right to make that choice. Then you'll be able to make a sober choice to have sex with someone who is also consenting. Because then the reverse is true. When you do that without consenting, you might go to, according to how the law is supposed to be applied, is that if two minors are having sex, they all go to the juvenile prison, because all of them cannot consent to sex. So all of them has violated, each one of them has violated the other. But people, we don't have conversation about sex, so it's hard for us to have conversation about consequences of sex if we can't
even
discuss
talk about it.
Sorry.
So
Yes.
do you think that schools should be a part of this conversation?
Yes,
And
yes.
how
Sure.
so?
Yes,
yeah.
Sharon. Schools need to be part of this conversation. Early on last month, with the CBO that we have, it's called Dada Power. It's a Murang'a-based CBO. We had a mentorship in a primary school, and once we separated the girls and the boys, we told the girls, if you have any questions, kindly just speak them out. And with time, we found they were shy, so we asked them to write them down. And so many questions were about sex. And we realized that the longer we do not talk about these issues, because our parents might be shy, but our teachers may not be. They may be able to be there, because the teachers are like your second parent. They're able to talk to you and counsel you. And I remember we had the teacher, one of the teachers was a patron, and told the girls, please, if you're being, because many girls brought out issues of violations. They're being violated by their fathers, by their stepfathers, their uncles, and have no one to go to talk to. So it is so important to incorporate sex education in school, because kids also feel vulnerable to teachers. They can go and talk to them. So I think it's so important to bring sex education. And I'm glad that Professor Magoha is on board with the current, with bringing sex education in the curriculum. He just has an issue with the current CSE document, but he's okay. He says, let's appropriate it to our context, to our country, and then let's do it. Yeah.
Schools indeed do have to do something, and like I said, I'm a very honest person. Like, we have to be honest about this conversation. Even Professor Magoha having an issue with the document, it's because the language is pretty much like if it's sex, let's talk about sex. And you see, it's problematic because schools are about to open and the new curriculum is being introduced. The problem with having a situation where a curriculum is being introduced but we don't have a comprehensive sex education document that goes hand in hand is that we'll keep on slacking, and the more we slack, the more the problem becomes bigger. I mean, we had our constitution in 2010. We said we'll pass it and then we'll amend it. What amendment is happening? 2/3 is still struggling 10 years down the line. So that is gonna, because we are already in a system that is comfortable with procrastinating and slacking on issues that are very important. So as far as I'm concerned, we have to be proactive now. This comprehensive sex education, you have a document by the United Nations that is really comprehensive, complete with research, and how it affects not only girl children but boy children as well. How boy children are being victims of sodomy and pedophile and all that kind of stuff. And we are not paying attention to that because we've created a society that speaking about sex is not a comfortable thing. I, like them, I was in a school in West Pokot and I asked boys to write questions about anything to do with sex, sexuality, and all that kind of stuff. I was shocked that a Form 2 boy is asking me about period sex. They wanted to have sex with their girlfriend and the girlfriend was in period. Is it wrong to have sex with a girl in the period? And these are conversations we assume that these are things that are not happening, but they are happening. But they're happening to children that have no one to talk about these issues with. What if this child actually knew having sex before you're 18 is actually wrong? This question would come up, but would come up with some sort of understanding that it does not really matter. If you're not yet 18, it's not okay to have sex. In a school where we have 120 students, the population was 105 boys versus 15 girls. That broke my heart. And when you hear the reasons why there's that kind of problem, it's many reasons. It's rape when these girls are trying to come to school, because some of them stay very far away, at least an hour to the school. This is the same system that you'll be told in the same school, the boys can stay on boarding, but girls cannot. So it's a system that is oppressing the girl who has not been talked to about sex, the girl who knows nothing about even simple things like menstrual hygiene. The girl who misses school because of sanitary towel, but on top of that, misses school because she got pregnant because someone raped her, or someone who is way older than her is exploiting her sexually so that she can get uniform and all that kind of stuff to go to school.
Or it could even be her peers, but her peer will still go to school and she'll be the one.
And she will stay at home.
Right.
So it's things like this, and we are not being honest about these conversations. And this is a school that, of course, is regulated by the government. So you can't tell me the government is not aware. In the very least, the local government is aware. What are we doing about that? These things are happening. We are already facing the consequences of not having conversations about sex and sex education. And so as far as I'm concerned, yes, we need sex education. We also need refresher courses for our teachers in schools so that they can be able to understand how to talk about sex. Telling a girl that stay away from boys is sex education is not education. Why are you telling me to stay away from a boy who I share a class with, I share a desk with, we are given assignments, I do assignments with. You put us in group discussions, you put us together. Yeah. I go home, I have brothers. I go to church, in the Sunday school,
there's
whatever.
men everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So,
you can't be telling me stay away from the same people that I interact with everywhere.
So do you think it's then practical to assume that if we are having conversations, and honest conversations about sex, that sex is also about pleasure, it's a good time, if it's in the right space, that it won't also then lead to curiosities and wanting to experiment with,
because then they would understand if it's pleasure, if it's something. Because also we've created a monster out of sex that we only see sex as something where you can get HIV, STIs, pregnancy.
Yeah.
And because
with teens, when you're younger, it's that. But then when you're older, it's like
it's too much double standard. You see, it's a lot of double standard that we confuse these young people, and so they do not know what to believe in and what not to believe in. And because of that, that's why they're becoming very curious. Also, very curious in a society where they are not spoken to about this conversation. Right. So they go ahead and explore, and they fall victims to these things. But if you told them the most essential part about sex is pleasure. Because imagine if every time we all grown-ups are having sex, we had children, do you think would be 7 billion? It would be way more. Would be way more.
That's true.
So essentially, the bigger percentage is not to have children. The bigger percentage is not to get STIs and all that kind of stuff. The bigger percentage is to have safe sex and to derive pleasure out of it. If they understand this, then they'll be able to know, okay, fine, it's actually not a big deal, and I can wait until when I'm 18, then I can have safe sex, I can enjoy sex, and I don't have to worry about things like getting pregnant, because then I would understand ideologies like contraceptives, and that it's not only a woman's responsibility, but I have responsibility too. If
Yeah.
I'm not ready to father a child, then I'll use protection to ensure that I don't father one. You see, things like this, but we are not honest about this conversation.
Right.
And
yeah.
it's heartbreaking.
And yeah,
Yes.
it's heartbreaking. And then it's even more shocking
Yeah.
that the age would then, someone would think to lower that age even, by 2 years down to
Yeah.
16,
Yeah.
when something like alcohol, which, I mean, sure, it has like great repercussions and
Yes.
consequences if
Yes.
misused, but I think having sex quite early
Yeah.
and not having the right information around it could even have greater consequences.
Yeah.
But we want to reduce that.
It's
that
it's
age.
actually endangering
It's-
our
it's
kids.
Yeah.
Really. And
What's been the response online with the hashtag sex consent age KE?
people
What's been-
are saying that most people say that we are being pretentious because we don't talk to kids about sex. We are not talking about sex in school as well. And as we continue having these discussions, the traditional spaces, safe spaces that we used to have, the church, the hospitals, police cells, they have become places where sexual offenders are hidden,
Yeah.
are protected.
Yeah.
Our parents, your mother knows you're being raped by your father, but he
Right.
protects your father. That we continue hiding behind cameras, we continue hiding behind, we are sweeping things under the carpet, yet you're not even dealing with issues face on. So can we stop protecting sexual offenders, first of all? Imagine these sexual offenders, our pastors, our imams, doctors, police officers, people who have, they are gatekeepers, they are duty bearers, they're the people who are exploiting our kids. We were asked, can they be held responsible first before we start talking about, and this is why if we find people are even having the guts to propose the age to be lowered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the onus really is on us.
Yes.
It's on us as a community to, to
Yeah.
protect the children,
To
not
protect
just
the children.
parents, but everyone.
And the fact
Yeah.
that, like, generally, like, even parents, because ultimately Maraga as a chief justice, and Maraga is also a parent, it's literally not being honest, because then that's where you'll find a situation where if you ask Maraga, what would you do if your 16-year-old came home with an MCA from a certain county and told them they were in a relationship with them? What would you do about that? And he'd say, for sure, that much I know for sure. He'd say, I'll kill that person because this is my young girl. But when does it stop being your young girl? Just because you didn't sire that child, the child stops being your young girl, becomes any other girl out there anyone can have sex with.
Right.
And that is the problem that we have, that we want this problem to hit home for us to have a
Yeah.
conversation
Right. But
about
that's
it.
not how it works. And
but
that's
it
not how
doesn't
it
work
should
like
be.
that.
Yeah.
When it's leadership, you work with looking out for your subjects, and your subjects don't have to be your children.
Yeah.
Your subjects are people who put you into that
Into that-
power.
in that-
It doesn't matter whether it's your child or not.
Right.
Any 16-year-old across the world needs to be protected. I mean, 16 year. Any
16
country
is
that
still, I
any
mean, I'm
very
just
young
thinking about my
girl.
sister is 16.
And
I would,
any-
if someone was like, if she,
and if you
Don't
look
even look
closely,
away.
Yeah.
any country that has 16 years old as the age of consent, it has policies that are in place. Policies including all sexual predators are put under a database, so that when they're
Right.
seen around a child, it's
That
known.
it's-
Do not
it's an
allow
alert,
that
and they
person.
can't live
But
within
in
a
Kenya,
certain
we do
yes,
not
we
have
don't have
that.
the
So the
systems
more
and
you're lowering the
structures.
edge, the more you're
more-
making
yeah.
the girl child a victim of
right.
circumstances.
Yeah, putting her out
Complete
there.
with a
really.
law that does not defend them. And
It
that is going to
doesn't.
be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ladies,
Yeah.
we're out of time. We're out
Yeah.
of time. But thank you so much, and thank you also for pushing this conversation online
Yeah.
and holding people accountable for really essentially just placing our children out as bait, placing children out as bait. Because at
Yeah.
16, you still have so much that you're discovering about yourself
You don't
to
even
try
know
and make
yourself.
a decision as big as, yes, I would like to have sex with this 45-year-old man. That shouldn't be part of what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Or, So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure. All right, ladies and gents, thank you for watching. If you are a parent, I hope this conversation today has given you the kind of courage, maybe even permission to start having this conversation with your children. It's never too early. And if anything, you want to be the person that your child comes to if they have any question about sex and sexuality. Just create that safe space at home. All right, thanks to Park In by Radisson for lending us your beautiful space. We'll be back 8 a.m. tomorrow Bye, everybody.